Halona Blowhole Cave Incident. On June 30th, 2002, 18-year-old Daniel Dick visited the Halona Blowhole on Oahu's southeastern shore. Daniel had just graduated from First Lutheran High School in Los Angeles, where he was student body president. He was in Hawaii celebrating his graduation with his mother and two brothers. The Halona Blowhole is one of Hawaii's most popular but dangerous tourist attractions. It was formed thousands of years ago when lava flows created underwater caverns connected to the ocean. When Pacific waves crash into these chambers, water gets compressed and shoots up 30 feet high. Most tourists view this natural wonder from the designated safe viewing area. Multiple warning signs in several languages warn visitors about the life-threatening dangers. A heavy-duty locked gate prevents access to the most hazardous sections. Local authorities spent years and resources keeping tourists at a safe distance. On this Sunday afternoon around 3 p.m., Daniel arrived at the blowhole. Despite seeing all the warning signs clearly posted around the area, he ignored them. Multiple witnesses were actively shouting at him not to go near the dangerous opening. Daniel deliberately climbed over the locked gate that was there for protection. He walked directly past the warning signs without pausing to read them. Despite people pleading with him to reconsider, he approached the blowhole opening. This was the exact spot where pressurized ocean water shoots up with incredible force. The pressure is enormous, the force is unpredictable, and the timing is completely random. At around 3:15 p.m., Daniel was straddling the opening of the blowhole. He stood with one foot on each side, directly over the violent hydraulic force. Dozens of horrified tourists watched from the safe viewing area. Daniel positioned himself as a human bridge over nature's most unpredictable phenomenon. Then in a split second, a massive Pacific wave crashed into the underwater system. A colossal plume of water exploded up through the opening with tremendous force. Daniel was instantly blasted 3 to 5 feet into the air by the hydraulic explosion. As he came back down, he fell directly into the blowhole opening itself. Witnesses immediately started screaming for help and called 911 within minutes. Everyone knew this would likely be a recovery operation, not a rescue. Daniel's body went down into the blowhole and into the underwater lava tube system. Massive water surges would have tossed him around like a rag doll. The Honolulu Fire Department launched a comprehensive search operation immediately. They deployed boats to scan surrounding ocean waters and helicopters overhead. Experienced rescue divers prepared to enter the dangerous blowhole system. Captain Richard Sue led the rescue operation against incredible odds. Rescue teams worked through the night in dangerous conditions with rotating shifts. Choppy seas made boat operations difficult and currents were unpredictable. Even experienced divers could only work in short intervals for safety. On Monday morning at 10:15 a.m., divers finally located Daniel's body. He was found about 20 feet from the blowhole opening on the sandy bottom. B&G Sinkhole Cave Incident. On August 14, 1999, 4 experienced cave explorers went to evaluate a Utah cave system. Rodney Mulder, Doug Zetis, Wesley Gurney, and Brent Hobbs were seasoned spelunkers. They weren't there for recreation, but to evaluate if the cave was suitable for rescue training. These were professional rescuers who got called when other people got trapped underground. The B&G Sinkhole was in rugged Utah terrain, part of a vast underground network. This was serious caving territory for experienced explorers with proper equipment only. Their plan was simple and routine: rig ropes and survey the cave dimensions. Doug Zetis was chosen to make the descent into the sinkhole. The team carefully rigged their rope system and checked all safety equipment. Everything looked perfect as Zetis began his descent into the cave. He rappelled down smoothly according to plan at first, but as Zetis continued down, something became terrifyingly apparent. The rope wasn't long enough to reach the cave floor. When he reached the end, he was dangling 40 feet above the bottom. He was stranded in the most dangerous position possible. Too far down to climb back up easily and too far to safely drop. Zetis needed to use his ascenders to climb back up the rope. Ascenders are mechanical devices that grip rope and allow climbers to walk up vertically. But as Zetis tried to use his ascenders, he ran into a deadly problem. The cave was covered in thick, cold, clinging mud everywhere. As he had rappelled down, the rope dragged through this mud. The entire length of rope was now coated with thick, clay-like substance. When Zetis tried to use his ascenders, the mud clogged the mechanisms. The devices couldn't grip the slick, mud-covered rope surface. Instead of locking in place, the ascenders kept slipping down. The cold mud was covering him and soaking through his clothing. Underground caves maintain constant cool temperatures around 50 degrees. Being covered in cold, wet mud was rapidly sapping his body heat. Hypothermia was becoming a real and immediate threat to his life. Zetis tried desperately to clean mud out of his ascenders while hanging. Working with frozen fingers in complete darkness was nearly impossible. Every time he cleared some mud, the ascenders would slip again. The psychological pressure was overwhelming for the experienced rescuer. Finally, Zetis called up to his teammates explaining his dire situation situation. His ascenders had failed and he needed immediate assistance to survive. The three men at the top understood the gravity immediately. This wasn't minor equipment failure, but a life-threatening emergency. Mulder, Gurney, and Hobbs quickly rigged a haul system with pulleys. This would allow them to physically pull Zeddies back up the rope. Hauling a full-grown man up 40 feet requires significant mechanical advantage. One mistake could send Zeddies plummeting to certain death below. They had to pull a few feet at a time and reset their grip. All the while, Zeddies hung in darkness, fighting hypothermia. The same mud made the entire rope system slippery and unpredictable. Inch by agonizing inch, they pulled him back toward the surface. The haul system strained under the load in a race against time. After what felt like eternity, Zeddies finally reached the top safely. Womer Cave Incident. On March 29, 2003, the York Grotto Cave explorers met at Womer Cave in Pennsylvania for a routine trip. Mark Engel had planned the expedition, splitting the group into two teams. Kevin Dunleavy, a 41-year-old experienced spelunker, led the second group deeper into limestone passages. They had proper equipment, backup lights, and years of experience navigating tight spaces. They reached a junction where a tight passage branched toward the back of the cave. The passage led to something called the Shoemaker Room. Dunleavy had never been down this route, but heard it was a quick 10 to 20-minute trip. The group made a fatal decision to leave their packs at the junction. All their emergency equipment, backup gear, and rescue tools stayed behind. Three members decided to stay with the packs and wait for the others to return. Dunleavy and three others continued into the narrow passage. The walls immediately closed in, forcing them to crouch, then crawl. The rock formations became more complex with loose stones and unstable formations. They encountered an 18-inch high crawl space that forced them to their bellies. Above them, wedged rocks formed a makeshift ceiling of breakdown formations. The rocks were clearly not part of the original cave structure, but fallen debris. Breakdown formations are notoriously unstable and can shift without warning. One by one, the group squeezed through the crawl underneath the wedged rocks. Dunleavy had to remove his helmet to fit through the tight space. When they emerged from the crawl, they made a crushing discovery. The passage ended in a blank wall with no shoemaker room. They had risked their lives crawling under unstable rocks for nothing. Now they had to make the same dangerous journey back in reverse. As Dunleavy turned to lead back through the crawl, he saw the full horror. The breakdown formation was far more unstable than he had realized. Loose rocks were balanced precariously, creating a house of cards. Dunleavy was halfway through when physics caught up with them. A 50-pound rock, disturbed by vibrations, shifted in the breakdown above. The stone crashed down directly onto Dunleavy's upper legs, pinning him. The rock was wedged so tightly it seemed cemented in place. Dunleavy was trapped lying on his back with a boulder crushing his legs. He couldn't move forward, backward, turn around, or even sit up. The three group members behind him were now trapped in the dead-end passage. Their only experienced leader was injured and immobilized. The trapped team tried moving the rock, but it wouldn't budge even slightly. They needed tools to break or lift it properly, but their equipment was unreachable. All their rescue tools were sitting in packs on the other side of the crawl. The decision to leave their packs behind now seemed incredibly stupid. Dunleavy called out to the three members waiting at the junction. Two immediately left to find Mark Engel and the other group for help. Sky Fisher stayed behind to try helping the trapped team. The pain was becoming unbearable as the breakdown continued to shift above. After 30 minutes, one trapped member remembered he had rope in his personal pack. Fisher was able to reach through cracks and retrieve the rope. This gave them their first real chance to engineer a solution. Working in the confined crawl was like performing surgery in a shoebox. Every movement had to be precise to avoid shifting more rocks. After several attempts, Dunleavy managed to lift the rock slightly. The others worked rope around the boulder to create better leverage. Working together, they lifted the rock just enough for Dunleavy to slide free. The moment he was clear, Dunleavy scrambled out faster than ever before. The others quickly followed, not wanting to spend another second under unstable rocks. They emerged like survivors of a mine collapse, grateful to be alive. Owl Cave Incident. On September 3rd, 1997, three cavers went to explore Owl Cave in Virginia. Two of the cavers had been in this cave before, but one was new to it. They planned to go through the 3,000-foot cave and exit from the back door. The experienced cavers told their friend it would be easy but tricky. The group started their journey through the winding cave tunnels. For a few hours, everything went well, and they had fun exploring. When they got near the back exit, something was wrong. One experienced caver noticed the exit looked much smaller than before. The two experienced cavers squeezed through the narrow exit without trouble. They waited outside for their friend to come through. The third caver tried to push through the tight opening. His head and shoulders got outside, but his body was stuck inside. He called for help because he couldn't move forward or backward. His friends tried pulling him from outside, but it hurt him badly. He tried pushing with his legs, but the cave passage was too twisted. Phil Lucas, who owned the cave, was camping nearby for the holiday weekend. He heard the calls for help and rushed over with other cavers. At first, they thought a few extra people could pull him free, but after many tries, they realized he was really stuck. The trapped caver felt like the cave was swallowing him alive. One rescuer went back into the cave to try helping from behind, but the caver was stuck between several huge rocks. Phil Lucas made a plan to remove some of the rock. They used a battery-powered drill to make holes in the rock. They put wedges in the holes to break off pieces of rock. This work took many hours and had to be done very carefully. With each piece of rock removed, the caver had more room to move. Some people watching got frustrated and didn't understand the plan. They wondered why the rescuers were pulling him back instead of out. Finally, they made the passage wide enough for him to slide back in. They used a sledgehammer to clear away the last pieces of rock. The caver was finally able to crawl out of the cave exit. The whole rescue took 4 hours to complete. Everyone clapped and felt relieved when he was finally free. The caver was tired and sore but safe from his scary experience. Alachua Sink Cave Incident. Alachua Sink is an underwater cave system in Florida that is very dangerous to dive in. In July 1992, 2 experienced divers came to explore this underwater cave. July is the worst time to dive because algae blooms make the water very murky. The algae turned the water green like paint and made it impossible to see. Smart divers know to never dive when algae blooms happen, but these 2 divers had driven a long way and didn't want to turn back. They decided to dive even though the water conditions were extremely dangerous. The divers entered the murky green water and started going down into the cave. Their lights could only shine a few inches through the thick algae. In underwater caves, divers must follow a guideline rope to stay safe. The guideline is like a trail that leads back to the surface. Without the guideline, divers can get lost and die in the underwater maze. Because they couldn't see well, the divers missed the main cave entrance. They accidentally went into a wrong passage that led nowhere. When they realized their mistake, they decided to turn around and go back. One diver was following behind his partner as they tried to exit the cave. The thick algae made it impossible to see each other even when close. The buddy could sometimes see his partner's light, but then it would disappear. As they swam back toward the entrance, something went terribly wrong. In the murky water, the 2 divers got separated without knowing it. The buddy couldn't see his partner's light anymore, but kept swimming out. He followed the guideline back to the surface like he was supposed to. When the buddy reached the surface, he expected to see his partner waiting, but his partner was nowhere to be found at the surface. The buddy called out but got no answer from his missing partner. Fear filled the buddy as he realized something was very wrong. He went back into the cave several times to search for his partner, but the thick algae made searching almost impossible. The buddy couldn't see anything in the green, murky water. After many failed search attempts, he called emergency rescue services. Professional rescue divers arrived quickly knowing time was running out. Even the experienced rescue team said it was the worst visibility they had ever seen. The rescue divers searched every tunnel and passage they could find. They even tried pumping fresh water into the cave to clear the algae, but the water was too thick with algae to improve visibility. For 3 long days, rescue teams searched the underwater cave system. Family members waited at the surface hoping for good news. On the 3rd day, the rescue team found the missing diver's body. He was deep in the cave system in a passage that was hard to find. Nickajack Cave Incident. On August 15, 1992, Gant and his friend went diving at Nickajack Cave in Tennessee. Nickajack Cave was underwater and protected by law because endangered bats lived there. A chain-link fence blocked the entrance to keep people out, but Gant and his friend wanted to find huge catfish that lived in the cave. Local fishermen told stories about catfish that were 6 to 8 feet long. The 2 divers were not trained for cave diving, but they entered illegally anyway. They swam under the fence and into the dark underwater cave. Cave diving is very dangerous because you can't swim straight up to escape. The water inside the cave was murky and cold. They swam deeper into the cave looking for the giant catfish. About 1,200 feet into the cave, Gant accidentally kicked the muddy bottom. A huge cloud of dirt and mud filled the water around them. The water became so murky they couldn't see anything at all. Gant tried to stay calm and wait for the dirt to settle, but his friend panicked and started moving around wildly. The friend's movements made the muddy water even worse. In all the confusion, the 2 divers got separated in the dark water. Gant's friend tried to find him, but couldn't see anything. The friend managed to swim back to the entrance and got out safely. He immediately called for help because Gant was lost inside the cave. Meanwhile, Gant was trapped alone in the underwater cave system. He was completely lost and running out of air to breathe. Every tunnel looked the same in the murky water. Gant didn't know which way led back to the entrance. His air gauge showed he was almost out of breathing air. Just when things looked hopeless, Gant found a small air pocket. The cave ceiling had a tiny space with air that was only 8 inches high. Gant grabbed onto a rock formation called a stalactite. He kept his head in the small airspace so he could breathe. His body stayed underwater, but his head was above the surface. Rescue teams knew they had to do something drastic to save Gant. The Tennessee Valley Authority decided to lower the water level of the entire lake. They opened the dam spillway to let water flow out. The lake dropped 3 feet, which created more airspace in the cave. As the water went down, Gant's tiny air pocket got bigger. He could move his head more and had more room to breathe. But Gant had been in the cold water for 16 hours by this time. He was very weak, cold, and sick from the long ordeal. Finally, rescue divers were able to reach Gant in the cave. They found him still holding onto the stalactite formation. Gant was weak and sick, but still alive after 16 hours. The rescuers helped him swim back to the cave entrance. When Gant came out of the cave, he needed medical help right away. His body temperature was dangerously low from the cold water.